Today I'm breaking down this Ichigo sketch step by step and showing how I approach facial structure, hair flow, and silhouette design. The main goal with this drawing was creating a strong, relatable pose while keeping the expression intense or relaxed. I always start with the head construction first because it controls the direction and energy of the sketch. I begin with a light skull shape and then build the jaw underneath. For this drawing, I tilted the head slightly downwards to make Ichigo feel more serious and focused. It was also basically what the reference I was using had shown. But kind of like I was saying in a very recent video, when you're using I'm using references that are not sketches. I'm looking at a photo of him like in the anime or in, official art of the show, and it's colored in. So when I'm gonna decide to sit down and draw that, like, I'm not drawing everything that's in that photo, but I'm taking what I can from it to make the sketch, whether I shade it or not. And I'm not shading these, so I'm just drawing the lines. So obviously I'm gonna draw, all the major stuff, like, okay, like, especially all the outer lines. So like the outer lines of his hair, the outer lines of his head, his eyes, his mouth, his neck, any body that you can see, like, are his arms showing, or, his clothing and each piece of his clothing. And then I could choose to shade or not, which I didn't do. But then other than that, like, what am I drawing? So I'm not drawing everything from the eye. I don't have color to work with. So what parts of the eye am I drawing? And what parts of the hair am I drawing? What strands or shading areas, even though I didn't shade, and, I'll draw where the shading would have went or whatever. And the reason I do that is because, well, I'm not shading, but I don't want it to, it's to help give more depth to the photo so it doesn't look flat. So you can see, it's not a three-dimensional photo, obviously, but, it's a cartoon, and it's not like a 2D cartoon. It's like, it's a cartoon, and it's drawn on a flat surface, but it's drawn with perspective that, the world is a 3D world, right? So there's obviously shading and perspective that makes it so that everything about a character or any scenery at all can appear 3D in an anime, for example, right? So I'll literally draw the outlines of where the shading would have went so that I can gain that 3D perspective, even though I'm not shading it. And the way I'm doing is I'm doing it in such a manner that after, if I, felt like I want to spend more time on this, I could go back and shade it, but I just hadn't done it yet. But when I shade, I usually outline the areas I'm going to shade before I do it. But I also do the outlining of it because I'm probably not going to shade it right now. And it's going to be content I'll upload. And if I get back to it, I already have an outline where I'm going to shade. And then if I don't, like, it's showing how the character would appear 3D, or it's showing where the light, where the lighting and where the helping with their overall perspective. So it's not just like a stick figure. It's on a flat piece of paper. This is a 3D character, and you can tell because of where the shading would have went and where how the perspective is, and, is their body turned a certain way. So, like, where is everything in perspective? Or how is everything angled, right? Next, I place the center guideline to keep, and eye line to keep the facial proportions controlled. Ichigo's expression depends heavily on eyes. So I draw those early in the process. In a prior video, I said it's his jaw. Now, the funny thing is, it could depend on the angle of the face. These characters will have all these distinct things, but depending on like the angle that their face is facing or where the camera is aiming at them, certain things might stand out more. Certain things might have their own unique thing about them that you have to maybe aim to get correct if you want it to look relevant. So in the other photo, probably had the eyes a bit more correct, but I think the jawline was a little bit off. In this one, his face is more to the side, so it wasn't hard to figure out the jawline. I'm only drawing one side of the face, but making sure the eyes was correct was a thing for this one. Okay, one sec. Just making sure Okay. Ichigo's expression depends heavily on the eyes, so I draw those early in the process. The narrow eye shape helps push the intensity without needing too much detail. After the face is working, I move into hair construction. I think about hair in larger group spike sections instead of individual strands. That keeps the silhouette clean and helps the hair flow naturally around the skull. Obviously, there'd be smaller clumps if that's a distinct thing about the character as well. Like, for example, Goku, he'll have like some, if you see him from the front, he'll have some, on like I just pick a random side because I actually don't know if it's specifically always this way. Let's say the top right corner of his head might have three large clumps of hair that are all clumped together, and then there's like a small strand that goes up but in that same direction, and then on the lower like left side of his head you see a bunch of more larger clumps, but there's also like maybe one or maybe two smaller just single strands coming out. And that's a distinct thing about him, that his hair will consistently appear like that, almost regardless of the direction his head is turned. So that's like a thing about him. But obviously the people who draw this person more often are the people who illustrate the show, or the creator of the show. They'll understand how many clumps of hair and how they need to be angled and where those random strands will come out and what angle they're going to come out at. Like this still okay. After the face is working up, I did read that. I think about here, and I did read this as well, but I'll just read it again and go from there. I think about the hair in larger group spike sections first instead of individual strands. That keeps the silhouette clean and helps the hair flow naturally around the skull. Once the head is established, I reinforce the neck and shoulder structure to strengthen the pose. Then I stretch the clothing shapes while focusing on larger folds before smaller details. This helps the drawing stay readable overall. This is also very heavily shaded, and I didn't shade it. In certain areas, it is very shaded. At the end, I reinforce the important contour lines around the face, neck, and shoulders. Then I clean up extra construction lines and sharpen the silhouette so the sketch reads clearly at any size. Now, it was just a quick segue thing about Bleach. If anybody I said this in a prior video recently, but if anybody wants to talk about anime in the comments, feel free to do so. or if you want to comment about like anything regarding the photo, the anime character, the pose in the photo, if it's relevant to something that happened in an episode or anything. When it comes to Bleach, I don't. So Bleach is also another show that I actually did watch quite a bit of it, but it was insanely long time ago, and I can't remember a lot of it. But I know the overall storyline and in general, very general. Or in like I understand some of like the theory on the show. So if anybody wants to tell me about Bleach, feel free to do that in the comments. Um, I remember watching it actually live when it was airing, like many very long time ago, and then I remember going and seeing it um, on YouTube back in YouTube's very early days when they barely had any anime on, and people would try to upload stuff. But yeah, I know it's about like it's very blurry, but there's kind of a isekai element where this guy, he wasn't the character who I drew, the main character, he wasn't supposed to be dealing with what he's dealing with, but he gets put in a scenario where he becomes he becomes like a reaper, and he gets pulled into that life, and the whole show is based on that and everything that comes with that, and then it goes heavy into detail with a ton of different things that I can't remember. So feel free to discuss that if you'd like. But yeah, just to finish what I said, basically the biggest thing with sketches like this is making the larger shapes work before worrying about the tiny details, which is a very consistent thing I'll be saying and that I've said so far.